أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من حمزه ونفخه ونفسه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I am not continuing the previous presentation because it was too much. So if I simplify it, I'll redo it again. But inshallah, today I've picked this surah, which is perhaps the youngest, smallest surah in the Quran. Everybody knows this surah. Before I start this, I'd like to again, and I did this about 8-10 months ago, may have repeated again, about what a sentence is, which it's a second grade, third grade thing, but it's important and it's germane to this surah also. So when you have in English, if you say a good boy is not a sentence because there is no verb in it. So we call it a phrase. It's a phrase. Same thing in the Quran also, same thing in Arabic. A phrase is a phrase. It's a segment, fragment, whatever you call it. Then if you say a good boy learns in the school, now that is a sentence because there is a verb, learn, in it. So a good boy went to school is a sentence. If you want to be more specific, you can say it's a verbal sentence, which is germane to Arabic. Now, if you say the boy is good, it's again a verb. There is, and it's a sentence. Now, if you go into Arabic and you say, let's say, Qala Ibrahimu, Ibrahim spoke, or Ibrahim said, whatever you want. Qala is there, the verb is there, said is the verb. So Qala Ibrahimu is a sentence. Good enough. And it's a verbal sentence because it's got a verb in it. But now, another example like be Hazara Yaqub al-Mautu. Okay? Death came to Yaqub. Death al-Maut, Yaqub. Hazara came. Came is a verb, so it's a verbal sentence. Okay. When you go to a good boy went to school, went is there, fine. But he is a good boy. It's a sentence because is in there. I am a Muslim, okay? Am is a verb. We are believers. Are is a verb. These are all sentences in English because the verbs are there. If you translate it, for example, say, Ana Muslimun, I Muslim. Where is? There is no is per se. Or if I say, Haza Baytun, Haza is this, Baytun is house, this house. There is no verb in it. But in Arabic, there is a verb in it, is, but it's not there. It is implied, it is not there. Okay? So a verbal sentence has got an explicit verb. You can see it in English, you can see it in Arabic. A nominal sentence, he is a good boy, is a sentence in English. It has got is in it, but Ana Muslim, I Muslim, no. M is in it, but it's implied. You see the difference, okay? There are two kinds of sentences in Arabic. A nominal sentence in which is there, but it is not stated. And a verbal sentence just like English. Okay? This is a major difference, okay? You will find it in this particular surah also. Okay, that's enough of that. As I always say, let us truly reflect, not in just this next 30, 40 minutes, but throughout the day, whenever we get an opportunity, let us please truly reflect. And here we are talking about the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then try to understand this book. So, Surah Al Asr comprises 3 ayat, as we all know. Wa Al Asr, 3 words, or harf. Wa is a harf. So 3, Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Okay. 6 words or harf. Okay. L is harf, for example. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihati wa tawasaw bi al-haqqi wa tawasaw bil as-sabr. 17 words or huruf. A total of 26 words. 26 words and or huruf, 3 ayats. This is the whole surah. This is the sum total of the surah. Generally, the literal translation, and I hone in on translation because most of us here read the Quran but do not understand and therefore have to delve into a translation. Okay, so literal translation. Wal Asr, most of the time you'll find by the time, as I was mentioning yesterday morning. By the time. Is there a verb in it? No, there is no verb in it. Wal Asr, there is no verb in it. So by is were, al is the, asr is time, no verb in Arabic, no verb in English. Therefore, it is not a sentence, it is only a phrase. It's a phrase, not a sentence. Next, inna al insana lafi khusr. Most of the time, this is what you would find, but there is a change I have made. Indeed, the humankind in loss. If you were to literally take inna, indeed, al insana, the humankind, let's leave away love for a minute. Fi in hus loss. Indeed, the humankind in loss. But no, that's not how we translate. We say, indeed, the humankind is in loss. So when we translate this properly, we will say, indeed, the humankind is in loss. However, in Arabic, you don't see is in ayat number 2. Inna, not, there is no is. Al, the, insan, mankind, la, let's leave it for a minute. Fi, in, and khusr, loss. There is no is. So this is a nominal sentence. It is a nominal sentence because there is an is implied in it, but not explicitly stated. Is that clear? It should be clear to everybody. This is a nominal sentence. The first ayat is a phrase. It's not a sentence. The second ayat is a nominal sentence because there is an is implied in it, but not explicitly stated in Arabic. When I go to the next one, we'll show the humankind in loss. No, he is in loss. Okay, let's go to the third ayat. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Except those who believe and do the righteous deeds and enjoin, which is to say counsel or call upon to the truth, and enjoin, which is to say counsel or call upon to the patience. This is the literal translation of the third ayat. Okay, now, ayat 1, as I said, by the time is a phrase, not a sentence, because there is no verb in here. Ayat 2, indeed the humankind in loss. This English translation is not a sentence because there is no verb. However, in Arabic, this is a sentence in which the verb is implied but not stated. I'm repeating now what I just said before. Because in Arabic, the word is does not exist. Such a sentence in Arabic is called a nominal sentence. When we translate a nominal Arabic nominal sentence in English, the verb is placed appropriately in the sentence. So indeed, the humankind in loss, when I say appropriately, if you know the grammar, you know that is will come after humankind. The verb is placed appropriately in the sentence so it translates correctly in English. And so here, the humankind is in loss. Meanwhile, a verbal Arabic sentence is the one in which the verb is explicitly stated, as I said before. For example, Ja'al munafiqun, the hypocrites came. Al munafiqun, the hypocrites, Ja'a came. See, the verb is there. It's an explicitly stated one, so it's a verbal sentence. Is that clear? Now, Ayat 3, except those who believe and do the righteous deed and enjoin to the truth and enjoin to the patients. This is not a sentence. Why? Because it in effect is a continuation of the sentence that began in ayat 2. Ayat 3 just lays out an exception to the statement of ayat 2. Okay, let me elaborate. So, in translation, ayat 2 and 3 read as one sentence. What is that sentence? The humankind is in loss except those who believe, do good deeds, enjoin truth, and enjoin patience. Doesn't it read well? It is a sentence. Ayat 2 plus ayat 3 combined make a sentence. Ayat 2 is sentence itself, yes. But ayat 3 comes in and joins that sentence and further elaborates that sentence, but the sentence is still one sentence. The Quran, of course, however, deems it in its infinite wisdom to state these four exceptions. See, the exceptions of belief, righteous deeds, counseling each other to the truth, counseling each other to patience. The Quran deems it in its infinite wisdom to state these four exceptions as a separate ayat, ayat 3. We should realize that while ayat 2 and ayat 3 in English will be one sentence, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states first, you are in loss. And then he comes back, and I'll delve into it, and finishes that sentence in ayat 3, but he finishes it as an exclusively independent ayat. This is the beauty. You have to realize this beauty as we go on. This is why I elaborated on a little bit of grammar, and I apologize for that, but it is necessary. It is fundamental that we understand when we move from Arabic to English, what is it that we have done and what is it that we should not miss out as a result of this. So, as translated in English, Al Asr will be one phrase, ayat 1, and one sentence, ayat 2 and 3. A1, by the time, ayat 2 and 3, man is in loss except those who believe and perform good deeds and enjoy the truth and enjoy the patience. Is it clear? Okay. Now, let us unpack Surah Al Asr. Ayat 1, Wal Asr. Okay, so you read in Arabic, Ayat 1, Wal Asr, and you go to translation. Sahih International, it says by time. Yousuf Ali, by, in brackets, the token of time, in bracket, through the ages. Muhammad Sarwat, by the time, in brackets, of the advent of Islam. Mohsin Khan, by Al-Asr, he doesn't even want to say something, so by way of an apology, then in the bracket it says the time. Arbery says, by the afternoon, and an exclamation mark. And M.A.S. Abdul Halim says, by the fading day. Okay. Now, no matter which of these you pick up, what do you get out of these translations as such? You've seen Wal Asr, but you don't know what it means. So you go to the translation, it says by time or by the afternoon. I mean, does that do anything to you? Does it move you anyway, intellectually or spiritually? Indeed, what does an Arabic speaking individual, for example, Ahed's son, if he reads Wal Asr in Arabic, what does he get out of Wal Asr? I mean, what really does he get out when he reads Wal Asr? Really, nothing. I tell my son to read, he says, by time, and he says, huh? What is it? So let us look at each word next. So we back to ayat 1, wa al asr. Okay, now wa is the first word, the beginning of al asr. We know it's a wow. And of course, we know by now that this wow is an oath taken by Allah. Wow, so it's called wow of an oath by Allah. But this we know. It doesn't say here. Okay, this we know. Okay, so what is this wow? I have said this before several months ago in one of the surah. I explained this. It's important enough for me to go through it once again. Conventional English translations translate wow as by, wa al-as, by the time. So they just put it by. The word by is then supposed to imply that Allah is taking an oath by whatever follows the word by. So again, Ayat's son reads Wal Asr and he's told, okay, wow is Allah is swearing. Okay. But it doesn't say in here, he has to be told that this wow means that Allah is swearing. And then you just leave it. No, he's swearing, he's taking an oath by whatever follows the word by. Okay. By, he's swearing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, by Al Asr. Now that Allah deems it to be necessary to take an oath, what does it imply? It implies that he is asking man to pay close attention to what he, Allah, will be now saying. However, the translated word by on its own does not draw the reader's attention to the seriousness or significance that is implied by the letter wow or wa. It doesn't. Meanwhile, it is if Allah is saying, pay attention to this now and reflect upon this now. Remember, I started the lecture by this, reflect and understand. He is now saying with this wow, pay attention to this now, reflect upon this now. In other words, with the letter wow here, Allah is saying, consider what I'm going to say to you now. Consider, reflect, ponder upon, think about it. So to put it succinctly and authoritatively, Allah with the letter wow is commanding in English, consider this, which is following. Consider this. Now this, consider this, when you say, people's mind, they wake up. Because consider this with an exclamation mark says in English, this is important. Guys, wake up. Don't be asleep. Wake up. This is important. Why? Because this is Allah who is telling you, consider this. Anytime you see this, wow, say it's consider this. Allah Ta'ala just commanded me, consider this. Don't take that wow as by. Don't take that wow as just a letter. Consider this, says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please do not forget this. This is the 10th time I've said this in the last year and a half I've been coming here. So this then is the alternative translation proposed and used for wow in this presentation. We are still on wow. Al Asr. Various meanings proposed as per above. We just saw by the time, afternoon, late afternoon. So it's time, afternoon, declining day, fading day. Now, in the context of this Surah Al Asr has also been interpreted as late afternoon prayer, last hour of the afternoon, the time of prophet, or a period of time in the sense of an era gone long by, or an epoch, a long period of time. All these in English are the meaning of the word Asr, which in Arabic dictionary, Lisan al-Arab, you'll see, it will point out all of these to you. The purpose of bringing these out is to say that this word is rich in meaning. You can see it in many ways, and you have to focus here. What is it saying here? Okay. Now, linguistically, Asr is derived from the word asara, which means to intensely squeeze, okay? To intensely squeeze. This is a meaning of the word asara, which is a verb. And thus, it relates to time that is declining or fading quickly. It's as if asr is saying time is being squeezed, okay? More generally, however, as you know, it is meant as time that is measurable, consisting of a succession of periods, be they hours, days, years, or eras. So it is a time that can be measured, time, years, eras, hours, minutes, seconds. It also means squeezing. So asr is like squeezing the time. Hence, Asr bears the connotation of the passage or the flight of time. The most succinct meaning to me in the context of this surah is the passage of time, the flight of time, time which cannot be recaptured. Time which cannot be recaptured, which is captured in the word passage or flight of time. This concept of the flight of time is distinct, by the way, from dahr, which signifies an immensely long or almost endless span of time. And remember, the term dahr appears in Surah Al Insan. Has there not been an endless span of time, dahr, a time when man was not yet a thing to be thought of? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala poses this question. Has there not been an endless time before man was created? There he uses for word time, dahr. Dahr is different from asr. Asr is measurable. Dahr is almost infinite because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rhetorically asked you the question in this beginning of this surah. Addressed to humankind, then, Allah is saying in ayat 1, as it were, consider, that is, reflect or deeply reflect upon this, the passing away, the flight of your limited and non-recapturable time on this earth. Is it different from by the time? It sure is. Consider, reflect deeply upon the passing away, the flight of your limited and non-recapturable time on this earth. Wal Asr. Note all the various time aspects that have been suggested with regard to time here. The flight, the passing away, the fading, the declining, the intense squeezing that I just mentioned. In all these, there runs a common notion of time as being temporal. What does temporal mean? Humankind's time eventually runs out. Wal Asr, this time is running out. Mankind, this time is running out on you. Does it do something to your heart? Does it make you scary? Yes, it should. It is not recapturable. It is gone. What I just spent last second is gone. It's not going to be coming in. And he's saying, I swear by you, man. I swear by it. This concept of flight of time, as I said, is distinct. I'm sorry, I'm going back because of this. Okay, now. And so, as one of his many times that Allah exhorts us to listen in the Quran, to consider and to reflect, he asks here to take this reality in consideration. O humankind, your time is limited and is running out. That is a very daunting reality indeed, as I tried to press upon you in the last 2, 3, 4 minutes. Now, to signify its utter significance, Allah swears by it. He swears by the fast running out of man's time on this earth. Muhammad Asad translates this ayat wal asr as consider the flight of time with an exclamation mark. Why does Allah put us into a state of reflecting the quick passage, the flight, as it were, of our time here on this earth, in this dunya? Ayat 2 answers that question. Innal insana lafi khusr. If this were simply, now it says inna al insana lafi khusr. If this were simply al insana fi khusr, I would say the meaning would be essentially the same. The humankind is in loss, right? Al, the, insana, insan, fi, in, khusr, loss. And remember, I said is, it's a nominal sentence, is implied in it. The humankind is in loss. However, Allah brings in 2 additional words for emphasis so that the listener, imagine how much he has told you to reflect already in ayat 1. Now in ayat 2, he doesn't say al-insana fi khusr. He says innal insana lafi khusr. He brings in 2 additional words for emphasis. so that the listener realizes that there is absolute certainty about this. His pronouncement, this being his pronouncement that he just made in ayat 2. He adds the word inna and the harf lam. Lam, which is lam al-tawqid. It's called lam al-tawqid. Tawqid is emphasis. He had just added two more to that. None of the translations below, meanwhile, brings out the essence of both of these emphases. They only translate inna as truly, verily, indeed, lo, deeply. Halim says man is, in bracket, deep in loss. The study Quran says truly mankind, he says truly mankind is in loss. So he says indeed mankind is in loss. Pictol says lo, man is in a state of loss. Yusuf Ali says verily man is in loss. None of them talk about la, lam al-tawqid. These translations don't talk about lam al-tawqid. Some other translation will not even put in truly or indeed for inna. They'll just say what they said and that's it. And you read that and it's lost on you. Now, Muhammad Asad translates that innal insana lafi khusr as verily, for inna, man is al-insana, bound to lose itself. Humankind is bound to lose itself, not is in loss, is bound to lose itself. Now, this translation attends to both emphases. Verily is for inna, and bound to be for lam tawqid. With this translation, the lam tawqid implies that no matter what, man will lose. He is bound to lose. La fi khusr. He is bound to lose. Okay? You see the difference a good translation makes? It brings that spirituality, that emphasis in the translation, because we, when we read Innal insana lafi khusr very quickly in 1.5 seconds, we don't pay attention because we don't know Arabic. For God's sake, get a translation that brings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's intent to the extent possible. No translation will do it for you, but at least try to get that moves you somewhat. Because insan is in loss, does nothing to you. Verily, man is bound to lose himself, at least shakes you up. It is very important for you when you are taking this permission to use a translation rather than the Quran's word, that you pay attention to find a very good translation, which at least to some extent comes close to the word of Allah. He is bound to lose. So Allah, by way of directing man to reflect upon how his time is slipping away, ayat 1, sets forth the warning in ayat 2 that it is a certainty, without any doubt, that mankind is bound to lose itself. Humankind is bound to lose itself, ending up an abject loser in this dunya and in the hereafter. You see what ayat 1 and ayat 2 just did? It shook you up. This is what these two ayats say. What are you doing? What are you doing to the words of Quran? The dictionary gives it at, so what exactly is this state of loss, this khusr, loss? The dictionary gives it as to go astray, to lose one's way, to incur a loss. As a verbal noun, as in this ayat, the dictionary translates it as a loss, a failure, or ruin. Okay. In this sentence, fi khusr, khusr is a noun. Okay. And in English, a noun is translated a loss, failure, or ruin. But that's just the word khusr, okay? I didn't mention la and fi here. I'm talking about what exactly is this state of loss, this khusr. Now, if you go to Surah Al-Hajj, ayat 11, the Quranic understanding of khusr there pertains to losing this world and the hereafter. The losers are thus those who lose what they value most in this life, although not necessarily material wealth, and in the next life. In this particular surah, lose is translated to losing this world in hereafter. So it appears in this particular surah. In Surah Al-Zumr, in no uncertain terms, Quran explicates on the state of loss in the following manner. Say, behold, the true losers, Hasirina, losers, will be they who shall have lost their own selves and their kith and kin, their relatives, on resurrection day. For is not this the most obvious loss? Obvious loss? Allah dhalika huwa husranul mubin. Allah dhalika huwa husranul mubin. Is this not this the most obvious loss? So these two ayat are brought about to show you that this word appears elsewhere also, again, as noun, and a good translation will tell you how it should be translated. Behold, the true losers will be they who shall have lost their own selves and their kith and kin on resurrection day. For is not this the most obvious loss? This is what that phrase that downstairs, that down below I'm saying, pointing out in Arabic, is saying. And with respect to the disbelievers, the Quran is emphatic in pointing out that the disbelief of the disbelievers increase them in nothing but loss. He points out in the Quran, as far as the disbelievers are concerned, their belief increases them in nothing but khusr. That's the loss. That's the loss that is being referred to in this particular surah. From a spiritual perspective, khusr, loss, can also be seen as a reference to losing one's faith and one's attachment to Allah. Finally, when Asr is understood as the rapid passing of man's limited time on this earth, this verse, ayat 2, suggests that those who do not utilize fully and properly this Allah-given blessing of time while on this earth, they are bound to lose, that is, remain in a constant state of khusr. In other words, before you know it, all is gone. Innal insana lafi khusr wal asr, gone. Before you know it, you realize there is nothing special about you. Okay? In my old age, I realized there is nothing special about me. And I reflect upon my 78 years. And there is nothing but loss that dawns on me if you are objective about it. All you lazily thought when you were in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, oh, I'll do this, I have plenty of time. I'll do this, I've got lots of time, there's no problem. All you lazily, it's a lazy thought process. You lazily thought that you will achieve, and you find out when you're 78 that it hasn't occurred. And unless you have what Surah Al Asr has to say in ayat 3, that sense of defeat that I just spoke of, that sense of folly, that moral failure, it's very real. It's very daunting. It's very scary. It should wake up as night time. At least at my age, it does wake me up at night time. It's a very scary thought. So, the Quran, after directing man to consider the fate of the passage of his limited time in ayat 1, and then in ayat 2, making a foreboding declaration, a scary declaration that man is bound to be in a state of loss through the rapid flight of his lifetime, the Quran comes back. And now it comes back in an equally strong but a welcoming declaration in ayat 3. Ayat 2 was daunting. It told you, you are in a state of loss. You thought lazily, oh, I got a lot of time. You are in a state of loss. Then his mercy then comes in. And his mercy comes with this welcoming declaration in ayat 3 of Al Asr, wherein it highlights the exception to his dictate of utter state of man's loss, Khusr of ayat 2. So that then brings us to the third and last ayat of Surah Al Asr. Muhammad Asad translates ayat 3 as إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, as unless he, the human being, is of those who attain to faith, that is belief, who do good works, and enjoin, call upon one another, the keeping to truth, and enjoin, call upon, or counsel one another, patience in adversity. Now, there is plenty to unpack in this short ayat that defines those who escape the state of loss in their time on this earth. So first, there are those who have attained to faith, that is, those who believe in Allah. But what is the kernel? You know, when you have a corn cob, the kernel, one corn. What is the kernel? The very essence of belief in Allah, amanu. What is it? Here, within the context of this surah where Allah is asking us to consider time, the very essence of belief in Allah is this: to put Allah right at the center of your time. Right at the center of our Asr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا 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 آمَنُوا. No. Wal Asr, He's told you about Asr. He has told you you're in a state of loss. Then he says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. What does he mean? He means put me in the center of your time. Otherwise, you're in loss. Put me in the center of your time. Right at the center of our Asr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no way that human beings, mankind, man or woman, whatever you call it, with a real iman will perceive or experience or understand time the way a hedonist does. What does the hedonist do? The way a person who is devoted solely to pleasure as a way of his life does. A hedonist is a person who is devoted solely to pleasure as a way of his life. He passes his time in pleasure. His time is time to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. The exception Al Asr brings in, the first exception is Allazina amanu. Not I believe. No, it doesn't say I believe. It says if Allah is at the center of man's very experience of his time, that is the state of our iman, which will modify. That will modify the sharp mood swings between arrogance and defeatism, between overconfidence and despair. That is Alladhina Amanu as it pertains to Alladhina Amanu in Surah Al Asr. You see the significance? Why he says, except those who believe? He's pointing out, take this time and make me the focus of his time, of your time. Second, amelu as-salihati. We know all this. Do good works, perform righteous deeds. Here one must remind oneself that this surah is a very early Makkan surah. I think it's 12th or 13th or 14th Makkan surah. What are considered foundational ritual dictates today were absent then. At the time of its revelation, there was no ritual fasting. There was no ritual of ritual prayer. So, when this surah comes in and it says, Amilu as-salihati, the concept of good deeds was brought up. It could not have meant do more fasts. Oh, I'll do 10 more fasts. Or perform extra prayers. I'll do more salah. To followers of Prophet Muhammad, performance of good deeds could only have meant at that time human service. Do good by others. Serve the well-being of others. It doesn't say anything about sawab. It doesn't say anything about fasting. It just doesn't say it. It says do good works. And the companions Got it? Do good works what? Human service, good by others, the well-being of others. That would have been the intent of do good deeds, amilu salihate, performing extra prayers, observing extra fasting are amilu ta'a, voluntary deeds for oneself. Okay, those are voluntary deeds for yourself. Extra tawaf or extra rosa or extra prayers, they're for yourself. They're not good deeds. They're for yourself. Good deeds are for other people. Here and elsewhere, note that Allah exhorts man to believe, followed by an exhortation to do good deeds. In so doing, Allah is once again reminding us that this sequence reflects the manner in which good deeds are believed to arise from and therefore are always conjoined with faith and belief in Allah. You don't have faith and belief in Allah as a Muslim, the good deeds are not going to come. But just the belief in Allah is not sufficient. Allazina amanu wa amilu salihati. 28 times it appears this way in the Quran. But if Allah at the center of man's very experience of time, I did that. Going. Okay, so finally we come to the third and fourth exhortations of Ayat 3. This is, to quote the eminent scholar Khalid Abul Fadl, is وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, the pulsating heart of Surah Al Asr. The pulsating heart of Surah Al Asr is the exhortation, Allah's exhortation to enjoin truth, tawasaw bil haqq, and patience, tawasaw bis sabr. One another comes from the word tawasaw. I'll delve upon it now. The word tawasaw has been interpreted here as enjoin or counsel or call upon or exhort one another. One another. Its root letters are waw, swad, and ya. It appears 5 times in the Quran, twice here, twice in Surah Al-Balad, and once in Surah Al-Dhariyat. And it appears, and forgive me for this, but it's important, it appears here as family 6 verb. What is a family 6 verb? A verb in family 6 usually speaks of mutuality of one another. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. Counsel each other upon truth, each other. Counsel one another upon. When you bring the mutuality of one another, you change the verb to make it a family 6 verb. So I've shown here Surah Al Qalam. You know, in Surah Al Qalam, there is Ashab al Jannah, the people of the garden. In the early morning, they go and they say, well, let nobody enter. We'll go there and we'll collect all our this. Fatanado, yatahafatun, yatalawamun. See, tanado, yatahafu, yatalawa. That is a form 6 verb. What were they saying in that in Surah Al-Qalam, Ashab al-Jannah? They were calling upon, fatanado. They were whispering to, yatakhafatun. They were blaming each other, yatalavamun. 3 words in Surah Al-Qalam. They are all family 6 words. Why is family 6 being used here? Because they all pertain to one another. They didn't just call, they didn't just whisper, they didn't just blame one another. Same thing. Tawasaw, one another. That is the significance of this ta, waw, swad, and ya have been moved in this tawasaw, in this fashion, in family 6. It is important to note, however, that tawasaw is simply not a repetitive talking about something to one another. When we say tawasaw, it's not just that we are talking about something to one another. It is not an abstract thing with no action. Rather, it is enjoining each other with the objective of doing and completing that which they are talking about with each other. Tawasaw is not I saying to you and you saying to me, we saying to one another. It implies that what we just said, we had better do. Otherwise, tawasaw has no meaning. Why would we want to counsel each other if we are not going to follow upon that counsel? So it's not just, oh, tell each other. No, tell each other and walk away. No. He, after the dua, is going to do Al Asr. And he said, وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And you say, well, he just said, let's talk about us, truth and let's talk about sabr. That's a coffee table conversation. He's saying, let us now go and follow on this. What we just talked about, truth. Follow the truth. Bring it in your life. Follow the sabr, bring it in your life. That's what tawasaw is. All moral values are imperatives, that is, commands for a Muslim because they've been derived from the divine. We all know that. We are obligated to achieve these moral values, these truthful tenets, because they are derived from that which is the supreme truth, Al-Haq. Al-Haq, the supreme truth, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one from whom we get these moral values. So they are imperatives for us. I just said it because I'm introducing Al-Haq. And so here in Ayat 3, the Quran comes and tells us to counsel one another, family 6 verb, tawasaw, about the principle of haq, to remind each other to do, not to remind each other what is truthful, to do what all that is truthful, no ifs and buts, no contingencies. And it does so, why? Because man often struggles to recognize truth in his life. He fails to achieve it unless he is reminded of it. If he is strong enough, he will continue to remind himself. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do that to each other. Tawasaw bil haq. You remind him, he reminds you, and both of you then go and do the haq, do the truth. But to remind each other. Implicit in it is, first of all, remind yourself. If you can do that, you are that much ahead. Now, within the context of a society, the Quran comes and tells us that the only way a society will succeed in the pursuit of haqq is if social bonds that enjoin truth, tawasaw bil haqq, social bonds that enjoin truth are being formed in the society. The bonds are being formed and followed. There is no point in forming a bond, a social bond, and not following. There is no point in him, the guy putting a stop sign, and I come at 6 o'clock, I have to stop, I have to put the right turn signal. 9 out of 10 times, the one ahead of me doesn't do that. He knows it. This is a social bond, but he doesn't follow it. What is the good? Coffee table conversation. Nobody's looking. Linked alongside the discussion of haqq, the truth, why are we now called upon to enjoin patience to each other, sabr to each other? It is precisely because we often struggle to recognize and achieve the truth throughout the passage of our time. Again and again and again, we struggle to recognize, remind ourselves truth, that unless we pursue it diligently with perseverance, we're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to recognize, to remind yourself of the truth, and then to follow the truth without having a conjoining element of sabr, of perseverance. See the wisdom in it? He puts tawaso bil haq and he says tawaso bil sabr, because this is a tough call to remind yourself to be truthful, and then to be truthful is a tough call. And you say, Ya Allah, give me patience. Once again, give me patience so I do recognize truth and I do follow truth. So he says, tawaso bil haq, tawaso bil sabr. Without sabr, no, it's not going to come. If you are besabr, if you are not patient, you're going to struggle badly, and you may not even find, and you may not even follow the truth. Sabr is conjoined with truth in this particular half of one ayah, which is a half of quarter of one sentence, if you remind the first ones. This pursuit, this perseverance, this sabr, therefore, is of the same category as seeking and achieving the truth. Equally important. He didn't differentiate. He said, tawaso bil haq, tawaso bil sabr. Same weight given to both. It requires that man reminds oneself and others to exercise patience in their quest of truth. Exhorting each other to patience may therefore be interpreted as encourage one another in maintaining truth, following the dictates of divine in the face of difficulties and opposition. This you do to your humankind. This is tawaso. Tawaso bil haq followed by tawaso in conjoined with tawaso bil haq. So this Surah Al Asr ends with emphasizing the virtues of remaining firmly truthful as well as remaining patient in a world that in general has been spiritually darkened. And in particulars, at times it presents man with an ongoing series of spiritual crises. There is complete truth in this sentence, isn't it? Let us all look at this sentence and say, it is indeed truth. The world is spiritually darkened, undergoing a series of spiritual crises. So it emphasizes the virtues of remaining firmly truthful and of remaining patient in this world. The fact that in the typical medieval way of emphasizing, 1200, 1400 years ago, this surah has been given the weight of 1/3 of the Quran. We all know that. A surah comprising about 25 words, carrying the weight of 25,000 words, 1/3 of the divine book, which is about 75,000 plus words. Why? It goes to suggest the very deep significance, the reflection and the urgency acting upon the message that Surah's words carry. Surah Al Asr is the summation of Islam. Eventually, it became a Muslim tradition to begin important meetings with Al-Fatiha and end them with Al Asr. Early followers of the Prophet, upon meeting each other, would recite the surah to each other before they separated. As it has also been said, if one were truly to comprehend, if one were truly to reflect upon, if one were truly to internalize, and if one were finally to act upon what Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al Asr have to say, that would be sufficient. Before I end this, can I read one page from this book? It is pertinent. I just finished this book about a week and a half ago, and I'll read a page. I'll let you know about it. Everything on earth inevitably withers. You know what this is, right? Surah Rahman, ayat 26. Everything on earth inevitably withers, or everything on earth is bound to pass away. You see the relevance here. observes the Quran, recognizing that even ages of great progress cannot last forever. Immensely wealthy Muslim empires grew decadent and haughty, convinced of their own invincibility and their rivals' inferiority. As their host capitals basked in unimaginable material and intellectual riches, institutions like Beit al-Hikmah in Baghdad gradually lost their innovative drive. Then came a wave of violent incursions. The Crusaders in the Holy Land, the Renquista in Spain, and the collapse of Idrisid and Fatimid empires. As much of Islamic Spain fell, Cordoba, legendary institutions were sacked, millions of books were burned. While Baghdad remained safe, the ascendant Mongol forces ravaging Rhine, China, and India slowly encroached from the east. Amidst this political stability and looming external threats, a researcher from Beit al-Hikmah named Al-Jazari returned to his native Syria to help develop irrigation systems to address an extended drought. 1206. Fascinated by gear's ability to translate minimum energy input to maximum output, Al-Jazari loved designing robotic and hydraulic systems that applied algebra to hydrology. He invented the piston, as well as many advanced gears still used in electric generation and transportation vehicles, and it earned him the moniker of the father of modern engineering and robotics. In 1206, he sensed both his imminent mortality. He realized that he is now reaching that age, old age, as well as he sensed the Islamic Golden Age's expiration. Al-Jazari constructed one final masterwork, many masterworks he had done all his life, one final masterwork, an advanced mechanical clock that calculated time based on celestial movements. It was powered by a network of sophisticated gears and water flow regulators. The timepiece marked each hour with a clang of mechanized symbols and announced dawn and dusk with imitation bird chirps generated via gargling water. On the bottom of his colorful blueprint, see, he designed this on a blueprint, and he made this clock that I just described. On the bottom of his colorful blueprint for this clock design, Al-Jazari wrote an enigmatic Quranic allusion. Nothing. He wrote nothing, just all this design. One enigmatic Quranic allusion, Al Asr. I drew this picture. What has happened in this? He senses his own mortality. He senses the decline of Islamic golden age. He develops a clock, brilliant clock. His blueprint has at bottom of it Al Asr. He recognized what this Al Asr said in this book, relating a reference to the surah describing the squeeze of time. Remember I said squeeze of time? And the importance of maximizing every ephemeral moment. The word also contained a sad irony. Reciting Surah Al Asr traditionally marked the end of a session, or in this case, an era, an epoch. Indeed, the clock was ticking down on the golden age, of which Al-Jazari represented just the last exceptional inventor. Just 52 years after Al-Jazari's death, Mongol forces burst into Baghdad before ransacking the opulent Abbasid capital. The soldiers headed straight for Bayt al-Hikmah, the house of wisdom. They burned Al-Khwarizmis. If you don't know Al-Khwarizmis background, unfortunate you are. Legendary center to the ground, massacred its scholars and hurled thousands of books into the Tigris river. Ink once painstakingly deployed to preserve priceless wisdom bled somberly into the water. The Mongol warriors then moved on to destroy Baghdad's central mosque, in the process incinerating the ancient doors of Solomon's temple and symbolically ending an extraordinary era of world-changing Quranic innovation. Al Asr, Al Asr of the Islamic Golden Age, 1206. 800, more than 800 years ago, we did this to ourselves because we failed Al Asr, we failed Al Fatiha. 800 years later, we read Al Asr and we insult it. We insult it by realizing not what this man, after his beautiful masterwork, just wrote Al Asr. And only Allah knows best. Please.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما اعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم الى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون احسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم فضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا رب العالمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus Ta'ala. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus Ta'ala. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, we have our son Ma'araj, our daughter Aisha Wani, our brother Adam, grandson, and our brother Amin. Oh Allah, grant all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we have many of our brethren, particularly those in Palestine, who are facing unjust war, complacent Muslim nation, and the transgressing enemy. Oh Allah, grant them victory, heal their trauma, protect their helpers, and grant them lasting peace and prosperity. Oh Allah, we ask with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pain have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, and his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinat arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinat arshih wa midada kalimatih. Wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.